Hey everybody, what's up, and welcome to week 5 of the Illuminerdi's post-credits WandaVision weekly show. My name is Richard Nebens. I'm going to be your host this week once again, and holy hell, what an episode of WandaVision that we have to talk about this week. Just as a quick recap from where we left off in episode 5, last we saw them, they were in the 80s getup, with Wanda and Vision kind of in the whole Roseanne family ties setting. Wanda and Vision were actually starting to kind of get at each other's throats there a little bit at the end of the episode, trying to figure out what's going on. Vision was trying to figure out what in the world is going on in Westview. And then, of course, right on cue, whether Wanda planned it or not, Evan Peters' Pietro Maximoff shows up just to throw everybody for a loop. And this is all while Sword is trying to figure out what's going on the outside. Wanda, of course, gave them the very not so subtle threat to stay out of her home, while Monica and her team are trying to figure out what's going on. And that is where we leave off for episode 5. This episode is called All New Halloween Spooktacular, and it sets us right in like the late 90s, early 2000s, that kind of style of shooting. Think like Malcolm in the Middle, Frankie Muniz, that kind of stuff. You get the kind of punk rock theme song, all about, it's going with the flow, even though it's not real. Of course, if you listen to the lyrics closely, you get those interesting, naughty, embezzled pants from Agnes in there, teasing some stuff from her later on. And that's where we start off. So this week starts off, you get the narration from Billy and Tommy Maximoff. They're both kind of decked out in their comic-accurate Halloween costumes. You get a very, very Malcolm in the Middle vibe. Frankie Muniz doing all the narration for what's going on. You got Billy calling Tommy a Dorkosaurus Rex, which absolutely hilarious joke. They're messing with Evan Peters, Pietro Maximoff, Uncle P, as they like to call him. He's playing vampire with them, and then Wanda comes down in something that Elizabeth Olsen has said she was really, really excited for and pushing for, the comic-accurate Scarlet Witch Wanda outfit. And, you get her all decked out in that, and they're asking her what she's supposed to be, and she says that she's a Sokovian fortune teller. Of course, they think it's ridiculous. They flash back to the Sokovian Halloween, which that has an interesting Easter egg in it. It looks like that Pietro and Wanda, when they're kids, are dressed up actually as Nick Fury and Natasha Romanoff for some reason. I don't know if that's intentional, due to the era or what, but great nod to the MCU there. You get back and Vision's coming down, and he is just having absolutely none of it. He's in the 60s comic accurate Vision costume, and Pietro's making fun of him for making fun of his broham-in-law. Vision, of course, at this point knows that this is all Wanda doing what she's doing and making this whole world for him and her. And he's basically just saying, there were no other clothes in my closet. So when Wanda thanks him for playing along with the whole Halloween thing, of course, then there's the secret thing for Mexican wrestlers comment, which is obviously hilarious. But it's clear that Vision is very aware that this is not real. This is not how things are supposed to be. And he's just trying to figure out what in the world is going on. And in that sense, he's trying to figure out what the hell's going on with Pietro, because he's there. He's just shown up with the kids and everything. Pietro's apparently taught the kids how to shotgun, soda or beer or whatever. And that is just absolutely hilarious seeing Evan Peters play this version of Pietro. Vision's about to leave, and then he and Wanda start fighting over Halloween plans, as Billy and Tommy note in their narration. Vision's trying to do the whole neighborhood watch thing, figure out what's going on, but of course that is a little bit of a ruse so that he can figure out for himself what's going on in Westview. Pietro offers in to help step in with the kids, and Wanda spend Halloween with them. And then this is where things get really, really crazy. They go back into the real world with Monica, Darcy, Jimmy, and Sword. And at this point, Monica is lambasting director Tyler Hayward for, ordering the airstrike on Wanda, the drone coming in to try to shoot her down. It is very clear that Hayward has no intention of talking to Wanda, trying to figure out a reasonable explanation for what's going on. He is hell-bent on taking her out. And Monica points that out to him. Of course, they get into an argument, and Hayward is turning into a real nasty guy. Is he? I mean, he even throws out that maybe it was a good thing that Monica wasn't there when her mother died, because maybe she's not cut out for this job. He orders the guards to take Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy off the premises, off of the mission and everything. And then as they're going out, Jimmy and Monica lay the smackdown on everybody to get them and Darcy back in to try to figure out what in the world is going on and see if they can help, Wanda and Vision through what's going on. And then last interesting thing about that, of course, Hayward brings up Carol again, Monica's relationship with Carol Danvers, which, of course, gets her on edge. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out, with the relationship between Monica and Carol going forward, especially as she comes into play in Captain Marvel 2, which she's set to do. And then they go back into the Hex, the Halloween thing. An interesting line that I noticed from Evan Peters when the kids are out, trick-or-treating and everything with him and Wanda. He says, "Unleash hell, demon spawn." I mean, that's obviously partially just Pietro being Pietro, because he is this new version of Quicksilver in the MCU. But that could be something really interesting to pay attention to going forward. I mean, he's saying, "Unleash hell, demon spawn." That is clearly not just nothing. And then, of course, they go into the whole thing, why Pietro looks different. Wanda's not sure about what's going on with that, and Pietro doesn't seem like he knows either. But Wanda is clearly suspect of why Pietro doesn't look like the Aaron Taylor Johnson version of Pietro, and why he does look like the Evan Peters version. So that is going to be something really interesting to pay attention to going forward. So at this point, Wanda is talking to Herb, who we haven't seen in a couple episodes. He's all dressed up as like a zombie in Halloween costume and everything, and he's on the watch. Quicksilver and the kids are, running around like crazy, stealing everybody's candy and everything, just make a complete hell around town. And then Wanda and Herb start talking about Vision, who apparently is not on patrol right now, according to Herb. And then Herb, of course, asks her, is there anything I can do to fix anything? Which, of course, lends itself to the whole Wanda controlling everything. And it seems like everybody is starting to realize that Wanda is controlling everything, but just going along with it. And then we go to Vision, who's on the outskirts of town. And when he's out there, everything looks not right. I mean, everybody's either completely frozen, completely mindless looking. You get that one woman in her yard, like going back and forth, putting something up, and a tear falls from her eyes. And Vision, it clearly sees that everything is not as it's supposed to be. It seems like right now, the further away Wanda is from the action, the less she can control everything, and the more just, dead and soulless everything looks. Then you go to another interesting commercial, which this one is like claymation. It looks like some of those old Dylan and Cole Sprouse Danibles commercials from back in the day. But this one is interesting. It's a commercial for Yo Magic, which is, some kind of yogurt thing. And you get this shark and a kid sitting on an island. But then when the shark gives the kid the yogurt, he can't open it. And he's trying to open it, but then like the days and nights pass by and he grows old and then he just dies. Like he's just a skeleton sitting there. So it's hard to tell what exactly this commercial is supposed to be referring to. Maybe it's a sign of Wanda's powers kind of being taken away from her, something with Mephisto or Nightmare. But either way, I mean, this is a sign of things to come for sure in the next 3 to 4 episodes. Then you get to Wanda and Pietro and the kids near the movie theater, which that's another interesting Easter egg to point out. The movies in the theaters are The Parent Trap and The Incredibles. Now, The Parent Trap is from 1998, and The Incredibles obviously is a Disney classic from 2004. So great job, Disney, setting the kind of time frame in there, and great little Easter eggs there. And then Wanda and Vision, the kids are, going around town trying to get candy and everything. They hear about candy going down the street, ask if they can go down and get it. And then Wanda says, don't go past Ellis Avenue. So that's going to come into play later on. And then the other interesting thing is, Wanda and Pietro talking about their accents, because Wanda notices that Pietro's accent is gone, and he says the same thing about her. And then we go back to the outside, where Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy Woo have all snuck back into the sword facility, hacked their way in, trying to figure out what's going on. And they realize that Hayward is tracking Vision due to the decaying vibranium, sensors that he has in his body. So they hack into the feed there. They see that everybody in the town kind of near Vision isn't really moving that much, and that's on the outskirts of town. And then we go back in. Vision is trying to talk to everybody, and he just realized nobody is even acknowledging him. And then you see him change back into, for the first time, the way Vision is supposed to look in the MCU. His classic costume, the classic face and everything. He flies up, looks and listens to everything that's going on. And then he sees Agnes in her car heading out, which is like a 1990 Volvo, so another great nod to the era. Then you get the hints of that scene from the very first trailer from the Emmys, where he's talking to her and she looks completely out of it, just completely soulless. He does the same finger thing to her head, the way he did with Norm in his office in the last episode, and she zaps back to life. And she realizes that it's Vision there and that he's one of the Avengers. But of course, when she mentions that, as kind of hinted in the last episode, Vision has no idea what an Avenger is, because it seems like he doesn't remember anything from before he was brought back to life by Wanda. Now, they start talking, and Vision is trying to figure out from Agnes what in the world is going on. He's trying to help her out, but she just keeps pointing out to him that he is in fact dead, just as she did in the first trailer. She goes harder into that, and then Vision, promises her he's going to try to figure out what's going on before he zaps her back into her sitcom mind, and she drives away. And then he starts walking toward the border of Westview. And then we get back to Wanda and Pietro kind of talking, and Pietro asks Wanda, where were you hiding all those kids up till now? Pietro seems to know that Wanda is doing all this, and it seems very, very likely that either he's not the real Pietro or he's being controlled by something. He gives reference to her powers, the red hand wavy stuff and the mind control things, and she asks, how did you even do all this? I'm not some stranger, and I'm not your husband. So he's trying to convince her that he is somebody that she can talk to. And Wanda just mentions to him about how before all this, she just felt completely alone, empty, just an endless nothingness is how she described it. Then she looks back at Pietro, and the same thing happens here that happened in episode 4 with Vision, where he just looks dead, lifeless. There's the bullet holes where his wounds were from when he got shot in Age of Ultron. His eyes are glazed over, just like Vision's were when the Mind Stone was ripped from his forehead. But then he goes back to normal. So after that, we see Darcy, hacking into the computer system, trying to figure out what's going on with Vision. And then we see him trying to bust his way through the barrier. We saw Wanda do it in the last episode, obviously of her own free will because she's controlling everything. But Vision is really, really struggling to get through this barrier, obviously because he's dead in the real world. And then he's surrounded by sword agents. Hayward's there. Darcy runs up. But then as soon as he gets out of the border of Westview, he starts deteriorating. Now, you remember from the last episode when Wanda broke into sword to steal Vision's body, he was in pieces. He, was taken apart. They were experimenting on him. There's a theory out there that Sword might be looking into his body and his framework to maybe try to recreate Ultron or something, because there's been a couple Ultron references. Obviously, he killed Pietro in Avengers Age of Ultron, and he is going to be a really interesting character to possibly look out for as this series comes to a close. But Darcy is yelling at them to try to help Vision, And Vision is struggling, really struggling, as he's being torn apart into pieces, trying to say that he needs help and everybody in Westview needs help. And then it finishes off with Billy and Tommy realizing that they could hear their dad. Tommy can hear, actually, Billy, I'm sorry, can hear his dad's screams of pain as Billy comes up. They rush back to Wanda, and Wanda realizes that Billy and Tommy can figure out where their dad is, Vision, and she pauses everything, just pauses everybody in the town, and starts expanding the hex. She expands it so much that Vision goes back in and he's alive again. But then everybody starts running, Darcy and Jimmy and everything included. Actually, not Darcy, my mistake, because Darcy is handcuffed to the truck thanks to Hayward, who leaves her there, and Darcy is sucked into the hex. And that's where everything ends with this episode. And oh my God, do we have some stuff to look forward to for next week. One interesting thing I want to note as like something I'm looking forward to for next week, now that Darcy is stuck in the hex, what is going to happen to her? Because we still have like the 2000s, 2010s episode to kind of look out for. And Kat Dennings obviously has a history with sitcoms recently, being on Two Broke Girls. That's her show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing if Vision ends up finding her. Because he did this stuff with Norm, he did it to Agnes, he was able to look inside their head and see what they were really going through and see what was going on. So I hope they find a way to have him interact with Darcy like that, so she can maybe explain to him what's going on and try to catch him up on everything. Obviously, in terms of acting this week, everybody did a fantastic job again. I love the version of Pietro that Evan Peters is bringing. I mean, he's funny, he's sarcastic, he's exactly the way that you remember him from the X-Men movies, just being able to, transfer him over to the MCU. And then that whole thing where Wanda just blasted him in front of the kids, it's going to be really, really intriguing to find out, if he's really Pietro, if he's being controlled by somebody, what in the world is going on with him. I mean, this episode was absolutely chock full of funny moments. I mean, from the twins messing with Pietro in the beginning, pretty much anytime Pietro spoke, except for that ending stuff where it got super creepy. Vision's just, pure not wanting anything to do with any of this. Just that whole look from him the entire episode. I mean, that was hilarious. I loved every single way they paid tribute to the late 90s, early 2000s, that sitcom style of shooting. And we are set for a crazy last 3 episodes of WandaVision. We still have the kind of Modern Family episode to get to, the late 2000s, early 2010s and everything. And then there is still a whole world of reveals that are coming from outside in the real world with S.W.O.R.D., especially now that the Hex has grown so much bigger and into such a bigger anomaly. This episode set things up for an absolutely wild ride, finishing everything off with WandaVision, and I just absolutely cannot wait to see where this goes in the next 3 weeks. Thank you guys so much for joining me for episode 6 of WandaVision, episode 5 of WandaVision Weekly, and I cannot wait to be back with you guys for episode 7 to see where this crazy wild ride of an MCU show takes us. I'll see you guys next week.